When you're watching Captain America the Winter Soldier. Guys, there was something in the air in 2014. There was a huge shift in the Marvel Cinematic Universe when Captain America the Winter Soldier released. I think this is a great turning point for the Marvel movies. I think this was a clear example of progression and growth for the character for Captain America. Well, he kind of just stays the same, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it was so cool to see him in the modern day not fighting aliens. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, how does he adapt to this new world? What does that look like for somebody from especially his time? You know what I mean? He came back from being frozen in ice and then he had to fight aliens. Like, that's a huge shock. But now, you know what I'm saying? Now he's trying to find that work life balance, find that sense of purpose and belonging, And in the past, he had the army. Now it's Shield, you know what I mean? Where does he really fit in anymore? And so I absolutely man, this movie was so good in so many different ways. I remember the promotion for like the advertisements for this movie. I think I had kind of either I watched it before or after, but they were making a huge deal about this movie. They I remember like on the advertisement or for like the trailer of the movie, they would put it on TV, right? And during one of the ads, they would be like with the reviews on there and they would say it's better than the Avengers. And I was like, "No, it's not." Like, I was such a huge Avengers fan. I was like, "No, the one single movie is not better than the all of them together, than them finding aliens." I was such a huge defender against it. I was just like, that's when I was like, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, that's how these reviews are like. They're just making it up. It's not true. Like, there's no way it's better than the Avengers. Like, that's not realistic. Like, they don't know what they're talking about. Like, that makes no sense. How is one Captain America movie better than watching Thor, Iron Man, the Hulk, Captain America all in one movie? Like, it's not better than the Avengers, but it's just really, really good. And looking back on that kind of idea, I completely understand what that guy was talking about. Now, obviously, I guess it's just different, It's different, but in a good way. I wouldn't say that they necessarily one over the other, but they're both on equal grounds of good, but for different reasons. This movie is really, really good because, it's, I guess what that reviewer or what that guy was talking about, where he said, like, it's better than the Avengers. I think what he was trying to get at was that it's more of a, I don't know, it's more of a realistic movie than maybe the Avengers for some people. Like, it's more realistic than fighting aliens. Does that make sense? Like, there are people who are like, I can't get into it because they involve aliens and all this space stuff, and it's like all over the place for them. But for somebody like me, I eat that stuff up. Me, I was a kid. I was just, this is so cool. It's bringing all the heroes together. Like, it was just, that was cinema. And then with this Captain America movie, I was just kind of like, it's the second one, it's the sequel. That's kind of just like, obviously they brought back Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow, Nick Fury with Samuel L. Jackson. They brought Colby Smulders back with Maria Hill. They added the Falcon to the movie. This was a stacked cast. Like, there was a lot of people in here. And so I wasn't really like in awe about it. I was just more so I was like, oh, it's just the second one. I wasn't as hype about it, I guess is what I should say. But now I was so enthusiastic rewatching this. It had so many great moments. I think that obviously when you look at the full MCU, like when you see the full picture of like what they were accomplishing, when you go back to this movie, there are all these little bits and pieces that carry on and that age very well moving forward. And so I just think that this movie was so solid. It was so fun. It was so action packed, but intense and suspense and thriller. It was everything, all in one. The acting was also phenomenal. Samuel L. Jackson gives a great performance. Scarlett Johansson, Chris Evans, Sebastian Stan. Oh my goodness, everybody does such an amazing job with their roles. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, the acting in this movie compared to Thor: The Dark World is, it's so subtle. It's not a huge outburst, right? Like, Thor cries, and it feels like a huge, like, it comes out of nowhere. But in this movie, it's a lot more up close. It's a lot more personal. It's a lot more one-on-one, talking directly to one another. And that's the cool part. So going back to what that reviewer said about it being better than the Avengers, it's like Aliens, you're in disbelief. You either have to believe in the world that they've created, or you're not going to get into it. You know what I mean? But for me, I was a kid. I still love it. But what's more believable for some people, what's scarier than, I guess, Aliens, or what's like more realistic, is betrayal. It's lies, it's corruption, it's completely different. You know what I mean? It's like people will lie to your face. They will stand up and tell you all of the good things, but never the bad ones. You know what I mean? They don't show their true intentions. And that's why I feel like the villains in this movie are definitely top tier. Let me phrase it. It's like Hydra itself is an idea. It's this group ideology, okay? And it has expanded throughout the years while Cap was frozen. And it has continued to progress. It has continued to develop and change the world time and time again. And it's not necessarily, oh, Alexander Pierce is the bad guy, because if you kill him, Hydra's still going to be around. If you kill Arnim Zola, if you kill Rumlow, if you kill his whole tactical team, it's like, it's not enough. It's an ever evolving, it's an ever hating group. And that's the thing, that's the cool thing about this kind of a villain or antagonist that goes against Steve Rogers, is it's not just one bad guy to fight. Like in the Avengers, they had to fight Loki. That was the main bad guy. Yeah, he had like an army of aliens, but those were, whatever, who cares? And it's not like in Iron Man, where it was like, oh, this is the Mandarin. Or in Thor: The Dark World, where it was Malekith and the Dark Elves, right? It's not one singular villain that they have to face, because those get boring. But instead, Hydra is an idea, is a group, is a never-ending thing. It's a never-ending idea, foundation, kind of just this. It's just never-ending, if that makes sense. It's this Hydra group that, time and time again, if you try to destroy it, it'll just come back. You cut off one head, two more shall take its place. It's an idea bigger than just one person. And that's the cool thing about it. That's the really awesome thing about this kind of villain. There's also the Winter Soldier. Now, the Winter Soldier is, obviously, the Winter Soldier is a villain, or he's an antagonist. He goes against or pushes against Steve Rogers. He fights the group. He's kind of like the main foot soldier, but he's not, quote unquote, the bad guy. He's just, he a victim of Hydra. Bucky is a victim of Hydra, and it just feels like, he's not really doing it of his own free will. They're like telling him he has to do it, or they're brainwashing him to do it. But I digress. I just feel like he is part of a put it like this. It's like if I am trying to take down, right? Let's say who's a bad guy? I could. It's like if I tried to like, who's a bad guy I can compare it to? Okay. Here's one. No, that doesn't work. I'm trying to think. It's like Kingpin. If you've ever watched the Daredevil show, spoilers for Daredevil, okay? It's like Matt Murdock, Daredevil, is fighting all of these. Oh, you know what? In season 1, episode 2, I think it's called Cutman, we see Matt Murdock fight for his life to save like a little boy who was kidnapped, okay? Now, the people who kidnapped him, they're like working with Fisk, they're working for the Russians, but they're doing it to get at him because Fisk doesn't like him. Anyways, long story short, he's working for Fisk. So his fight to save that one kid, that one little boy, that whole fight doesn't really change anything. He still has to go after Fisk. He still has to fight Fisk. He still has to get him locked up and take him down from destroying the city. That's kind of what Bucky is. He's the Russian foot soldiers, but Captain America has to go for Alexander Pierce. He has to go after Hydra. He has to take down everything, including S.H.I.E.L.D., you know? So it just feels like that's the direction that they're going in. That was so cool to see, you know, and to rewatch and to see it with a better to kind of watch it and understand it a little bit better, you know, to see how I've grown and I appreciate these movies a lot more now. So that was such a great movie. What else is there? Oh, Stan Lee cameo where he's working as the security guard for the museum and Steve Rogers stole his suit back. So he was like, "Oh snap, I am so fired." That was so funny. That was a great cameo. Shout out to him. But back to the start. I mean, the action in this movie, top tier action. It was so ground level. It was so hand to hand and acrobatic and full of. I mean, it felt like I wanted more action. After the scene would end, I was like, they were doing it. You know, they were straight boxing. I liked that. I loved that. It was so cool. It was so awesome to see. And it was just the kind of hand-to-hand combat or martial arts style or fighting that you don't really see in the Avengers. You see Iron Man like blasting and launching bullets. You see Cap throwing his shield. You see Thor throwing his hammer. You see Hulk kind of like smashing his fist down on the ground. But you don't get to see that kind of hand-to-hand combat like Steve versus everybody on the Lemurian Star or Batroc. Batroc? I forget. Batroc. Batroc. Yeah, something like that. Him versus Batroc, that was cool. You know what I mean? That was awesome seeing him do all those tricks and those flips, and also against Bucky on the bridge or wherever on that street fight. That was so cool watching them work with the blade and the fight and the push and the kicks, and all of it was so cool. I thought they were very unique in how Cap used his shield. And the elevator fight scene, oh man, you could literally do a whole breakdown of just that elevator fight scene and how cool that was. How Cap starts to see everybody and he starts to see that they're a little bit on edge. And then he's staring at that guy and he's sweating bullets. And it's like, what's going on? Everybody's supposed to be cool, right? Everybody's supposed to be calm. And then more of the tactical unit comes into the elevator. And then everybody's trying to stop Captain. And then they have him trapped in the elevator. And he finally deduces that they're going to try to stop him. Something's about to go down. And he's going to give everybody a chance to leave. And then boom, action starts and you see him fight everybody. Oh my gosh. That was such a cool scene. So dope. And then he finally beats everybody up, knocks them out, opens the elevator, and he's cornered. But then he uses his shield to slice open the cable wires on the elevator. And then now he's stuck in the elevator again. And he's still going to be trapped. But then what does he do? He jumps out of the elevator, lands on his shield, gets up, and runs to his motorcycle. Like, that whole scene is masterpiece. It's so awesomely done. They did just about, that is just such a cool scene, a cool moment. Like, that's what makes this movie so good, is that they have great moments. They have that elevator fight scene. And then after how does he get out of the elevator? How does he avoid everybody? He doesn't just walk right through everybody. He doesn't just walk out of there. He jumps out of the elevator. Like, that's just so cool. And that's something that only he could do. You know what I mean? If Bruce Banner was in there, he would turn into the Hulk and then he would just jump out. If it was Tony Stark, he would just get in the Iron Man suit and then he would fly out. If it was Thor, he would just break it with his hammer and fly out, right? But because he's a human, he has to jump out of there and then he has to cover himself with his shield, land on the ground, get back up, and start running to his motorcycle. It just feels like, compared to the other superheroes, like compared to Iron Man, Thor, and the Hulk, it feels like there's nothing that he can't face and overcome. And he's just, well, he's a super soldier, but you know what I mean? Like, he's still human. You know what I mean? Tony Stark has the suit to protect him. Thor, he's a god, you know what I mean? He'll be fine. Hulk doesn't get hurt. So it just feels like there's so much more weight, And then later on, they send a literal bomb at Captain America. And not only does he withstand the bomb, all the debris that falls on top of him, and he protects him and Black Widow with just one hand. It's so cool, dude. So it's literally like he faces everything that comes his way, and he's still like, that's the cool thing about Captain America, is that no matter what they throw his way, no matter what comes after him, he's able to withstand it and face it with his strength, And that's the cool balance about it, is you don't see him sort of. A lot of times you see good people and they are taken out or defeated or killed because they're not super strong like he is. He's the best of both worlds. He's strong enough to protect himself, to face whoever comes his way. And he's also a good man ideologically. He's able to rally people together to do the right thing, to do what is right, to do what is good. And I think that's that's what makes him so cool to me. That's what makes him that's what makes him my favorite superhero in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In the MCU, he's definitely my favorite. This movie just like reaffirms it, it keeps me standing strong about it. I think he's awesome. It's so cool to see his progression and how he feels about, about the system, about institutions. How he feels about S.H.I.E.L.D., how he feels about Hydra, how he even feels about Nick Fury. We see how he talks to Nick Fury. There was such an amazing moment between the two of them where Nick Fury shows Captain America the new, what's it called? Helicarriers with the Stark propulsion, the arc reacting propulsions to keep it up all the time. I thought that was such a cool detail too, that they added that because of what happened in the Avengers. It's just such a great straight line, it's such a perfect use of this full story. It's Tony Stark would invest in a new helicarrier so that way he could help out S.H.I.E.L.D. and his money could be used towards a cause that is good. And after seeing the last helicarrier and being in that turbine, it's just really cool to see that, like, this is his solution. See, this is how I'm gonna get you guys right. This is what happens when you include me a part of the team. You know what I'm saying? So I thought that was really cool. A nice little throw in. But Cap talks to Nick Fury, and he's basically saying that, like, what Nick Fury says to him is that these helicarriers, these new helicarriers, will be able to kill hostile threats. And Captain's like, I thought the punishment came after the crime. And he's like, we can't afford to wait that long, you know? So we have to be ready. We have to neutralize a bunch of threats. We have to stop all of these people. And then Cap is like, by holding the gun to everybody on Earth and calling it protection. Such a great line. Yes, that's exactly what they're doing. And Nick Fury's like, oh yeah, I saw what you guys did back in the day. I read those SSR files. You guys were the greatest generation. You guys were just as evil, just as nasty as we're being right now, as I am. And then Captain saying, yeah, we compromised, sometimes in ways that made us not sleep so well. But we did it so that people could be free. But this isn't freedom. This is fear. Dude, the dialogue, the writing, it doesn't get better than that. That is such a dope line. Such a cool line. And yes, that's exactly how I feel too. It's like they're trying to make everybody afraid so that way they fall into line. It's like, if people want to do bad stuff, let them do bad stuff, and then they will handle them. You know, you can't try to neutralize or stop people before they've even done anything. You know, that's how you take away people's, I don't know, I guess their free will, or like their idea to choose, you know. It's really crazy. It's so nuts. And I just feel like, in my mind, I just feel like what he's saying really resonates with me. It really sticks with me. It really makes me feel like I don't want to live in a world where I have to constantly be this, you know, authoritative figure. I want to be in a world where everybody kind of does good because it's what's right, you know? Because it's what they believe in. And I don't know, I guess what S.H.I.E.L.D. might consider a threat or bad, or what they will do or neutralize or kill, will be considered wrong. Other people might see it as justice, or might see it as right, you know? So I don't know, how do you even figure that out? But then Nick Fury says, S.H.I.E.L.D. takes the world as it is, not as we'd like it to be. And it's getting past time for you to get with that idea. And then Captain's like, don't hold your breath. Walks away. So cool, dude. His new suit, also awesome. I really like that Winter Soldier suit. What else is there? New characters like Sam Wilson. I thought Anthony Mackie did a great job. And right now, he's the new Captain America. Spoilers. Obviously spoilers. But anyways, he's the new Captain America. So it's just kind of cool to see his start and then where he is now. You know, decade later, he's the new Captain America. It's so cool. But watching Anthony Mackie kind of fold into all of this, becoming the Falcon and helping out Captain America and Black Widow, it just feels, they did it in just like a really cool way, you know? It didn't feel like forced. It felt like, oh yeah, it just felt natural, if that makes sense. It didn't feel like he was just there to throw him in there or to like set him up for anything. It just felt like they put him in the movie to kind of, I don't know, give Captain like this sense of familiarity, or somebody who has also served in the military and deals with, hey, what's going on? You know, how does he feel? How the feelings that he's going through are not solely just him. He's not alone in what he's feeling. It's something that's universal, that has lasted since he when it was frozen in ice and to where he is now. People can relate to him, and finding somebody who can relate to him, I think that's cool. There's also Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, again with a top tier performance. She does such a great job at doing, I guess, kind of like this modern, funny, comedic girl, and as like also as this spy. You know, she does a good job of playing both sides of her character. You know, where it's like you can tell it's Natasha, just her being her and her personality, and then Black Widow, where she has to be a lot more deceptive or cunning or secretive, right? Great job. I also really like the scene where she describes the Winter Soldier, how he's been throughout the years, been fighting, has basically been around for a long time, you know? So I thought that was cool. There's also, man, there's just so much in this movie. It's hard to get through. Let me talk about the ending real quick. There, Captain America gives a speech to all of S.H.I.E.L.D. and basically outing Hydra, outing Alexander Pierce. This is after he steals its suit from the museum, which I also really liked. I love the museum that they are finally starting to like. And it makes sense. Like, it makes perfect sense that now they come out with a museum in his name, or like to kind of talk about him and his history in World War II, because you gotta be like, first he gets revealed, then aliens attack New York, right? And then they give it like, okay, we got to make this exhibit, so it takes them like another year to figure out what museum they're going to put it in. And then finally they release it in 2014 or whatever, and that's the time frame we're in, you know? So it feels like it just feels natural to me. But anyways, the final helicarrier scene where he gives this final speech about the price of freedom, I thought that was also really cool and they do such a great job in this movie with just everything. You could literally, with the stunts, with the action, with the dialogue, with the characters, with the villain, it just all mixed in together very well. And it doesn't feel out of place for any character. It doesn't feel out of place for Cap to be Captain America. It doesn't feel out of place for Sam Wilson to be Sam Wilson. It doesn't feel out of place for Black Widow to be Black Widow, or Nick Fury to be Nick Fury. It's just so... It's just a great movie. And I truly, it's one of the best of this whole Marvel franchise. They do such a great job with it, and a huge round of applause to the Russo brothers, because they did this character right. They did this character justice, and they continue to become a huge part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they will continue to be a part of the MCU. So I'm in complete. They did such a great job with this when it feels like Marvel was kind of going down the drain a bit, you know? So they really nailed this one and did such a great job with it. But that final helicarrier scene where Captain has to face Bucky, dude, it's so different than when they fought on the bridge or when they fought in the street. Because before, he was just fighting another soldier, right? So the first time he saw him, he threw his shield at him, he caught it, which was also cool. And then he threw it back, and then he got away. He was able to assess, oh snap, this guy's a threat. Second time he fought him, went hand to hand with him. He didn't necessarily beat him, but you know, it was going in that direction. If they had kept on going, who knows what would have happened. And then finally, this last confrontation, everything is different. Everything, he finally gets revealed that it's Bucky. He gets this idea that like, oh snap, is that who I think it is? You know? And now everything is different. He's now not only fighting for people and what's right, it's also personal because it's Bucky. And it is so, that's the cool thing. That's the thing about it is they made it personal by bringing Bucky back. And you know, when I first watched it, I didn't know that they were bringing Bucky back. You know what I'm saying? Like from the first Avenger, I wasn't like, oh snap, that's the same actor as last time. Like I had a hard time believing it as well. I was like, oh snap, they brought him back. You know what I mean? At the time when it came out, so I wasn't like, oh snap, that's his. He was the one in the first Avenger. Oh crazy, you know? I didn't put two and two together from like the posters or the promotional art, or you know what I mean, like from the trailers and whatnot. I didn't put that together. So now it's just like really cool to see that they brought him back and they were going to continue to use him. It's just so cool what they did with this movie. It perfectly fits into the world of the after effects of the Avengers. It fits into the after effect of the first Avenger, how it all just pieces back together. And so that final helicarrier fight is really impactful because now he knows who he's fighting. Before he didn't know. Now that he does know, everything has changed and he has to face him in a new kind of way while also completing his goal. And also sacrificing himself. Again, he was going to sacrifice himself to end it all. He told them to blow up the helicarriers while he was still on there. He got shot in the stomach by Bucky, and he's still trying to help him out. He lifts that big bar, you know, for him. And then he gets out. And then he finally gives up fighting because he doesn't want to hurt Bucky anymore. And he's like, now that he's accomplished his goal, he's like, I don't want to fight you. You're my friend. And then Bucky starts going, bam, bam, right into his face. And then the helicarrier blows up. He falls out of it. Bucky saves him. All's well that ends well, you know? But it's just such a powerful move, you know, very impactful, very, very emotional, you know? And it kind of one of those moments where it's like, you can completely understand why he's doing what he's doing. You know, I think that's so cool. And then finally, I guess the last thing I want to talk about is the scene with Peggy Carter, because that was such a beautiful, heartbreaking scene. She's the only other person that he knows of who is still alive from his past, you know, the only thing that he could hold on to. And I thought it was so beautiful, the part where they're talking to each other and he's talking about, you know, kind of getting used to this new life, you know, getting used to being in the modern day. Where does he fit into everything, you know? And then she coughs and she's kind of like, oh snap, can you give me some water? And he comes back and she's shocked again to see him. It's like all over again, you know? What we would have expected to see the first time he went to visit her, you know, and now we see it all over again. We see that she's, you know, that's what her memory is. And he has to go through that every single time he sees her. And I thought that was so beautiful, so powerful, such a crazy moment, you know, something that I'll never experience in my life, of being attached to someone in that way. And how kind he was, and how gentle and how great he was with her is so, it's heartbreaking. It's also beautiful, but it's like, you know, he missed out on his life, you know? And then mid-credits scene, I think, was Bucky going to the museum and learning about himself, which also great detail, right? Like, that's a cool thing that they did. And it's obvious to tell that the writers were piecing that all together, right, is that they had the museum not so that Steve can go there and relive his glory days, but so that way, later on, Bucky can go to the museum and he can kind of learn about his past self, right? And then end credit scene shows us the new science division of Hydra, the scientist or whoever, I forget his name. And then we get to see their tampering or their experiments with Loki's scepter and how they've experimented on people. And the twins being Pietro Maximoff and Wanda Maximoff, played by Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson. Great casting, by the way. And it was so cool to see, look, this is what they're setting up for future movies. These characters, they're setting up the Scarlet Witch and they're setting up Quicksilver. So cool stuff. Overall, great movie, great setup, great, just everything. You could list everything on the box and they check. You know what I mean? From the plot to the characters, just everything, the action. I feel like they did justice by Captain America. You would think it would be kind of stale or weak in comparison to everything else. Like, he's not as flashy as Iron Man, or he doesn't have lightning like Thor, you know? So he would be kind of like this stale character who preaches about justice and truth. And while he does give speech and he does have like great dialogue about like doing the right thing, it doesn't come across as like this Boy Scout loser type of guy. It comes across as cool, and it comes across as really really powerful. And that's cool. That's the awesome thing about it. So, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, when you're watching Captain America, the Winter Soldier, be in for a thrill ride, for some suspense. Be ready for some great action. Be ready for twists and turns. Be ready to basically see the MCU at the time was at its peak. You know, 2014 was something special. And we'll see that with the next movie as well. So, anyways, if you haven't seen it yet, or if you're debating whether or not it's like good or not to watch, it's definitely worth a watch. I've never met anybody who's like really seriously hated this movie. And if they do, you know, just play them this podcast. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.